You're listening to episode 106, 5 Steps to Honoring Your Emotions. Welcome to the Boss Bitch Rising podcast. My name is Coach Kael Roberts and I am your host. I am a mindset and transformational coach with over 10 years of experience as an entrepreneur. I went from being homeless in 2016 to building a multiple six-figure online coaching business. I am passionate about those that I have the opportunity to serve, and so I'm grateful you're here. My coaching method combines science, spirituality, and strategy, which elicits powerful transformations, leading you to massive elevation in your success. I am the founder of the Collective Conscious Coaching Academy, Institute for coaches, mentors, leaders, guides, and healers. This is where I develop influential, heart-centered people. I share weekly episodes inside the Boss Bitch Rising podcast where I discuss subjects like psychology, the subconscious mind, human energetics, manifestation, business strategy, and more. I'm excited to hop into our next episode and I'm so grateful you're here. Now let's rise up. Welcome back, my love, to the Boss Bitch Rising podcast. As always, I am so grateful you are here in today's episode, and I'm really excited for all of the things that are coming to the Boss Bitch Rising podcast over the next few weeks. So as we transition into February, I wanted to transition into a theme centered around emotions, love, and relationships. Of course, there is that special holiday being Valentine's Day in February, and I know a lot of people are focused on that holiday in particular. Whether you're in a relationship and you have these expectations and feelings that you deeply desire to have centered around this relationship, or maybe you are single and you're focused on the fact that you are actually single for this holiday. That's the reason why I wanted to have different guests come onto the podcast talking about love and emotions and relationships, but it's also a passion of mine. It's something that comes up a lot within my coaching business as well. So we're going to start here in today's episode talking about the 5 steps to honor your emotions, but stay tuned because in February, I have some amazing guests coming onto the podcast. Our first guest will be Jamie Score, talking about trauma and navigating relationships post-trauma, whether you're healing and the trauma is very obvious, or whether there is that deeper need for healing and the trauma is not so obvious. If you have certain patterns that are playing out specifically in your relationships, it's time to take a deeper look at why. Likely there's some underlying trauma. And when we talk about trauma, we're not necessarily talking about this really obvious, really painful moment. When we talk about trauma, we're just talking about something that maybe we haven't fully processed or dealt with, and now it's causing some type of unhealthy pattern play out in your life, or maybe your relationships in this instance. So Jamie and I talk a lot about just different traumas that we've personally gone through in life and how it has actually revealed deeper parts of ourselves and has allowed us to have better, more fulfilling relationships. Then I invite Bianca Jolie, who is a spiritual life coach, onto the podcast talking about love energy. What is love energy, how to cultivate more of it, and how to be aligned with love energy in all facets of your life, not just romantic relationships. And then I'm really excited to also have Emerald Sinclair, who is a relationship coach, come on talking about manifesting love and how we can begin to manifest more love into our life, not solely in just romantic relationships, but again, in all different ways. So stay tuned because I am just so incredibly excited for all of the fire coming to the Boss Bitch Rising podcast over the next few weeks. But we're going to start here with 5 steps to honor your emotions. So step number 1 is name the emotion that you're feeling. As human beings, we have the capacity to experience over 130 different emotions. Now, the emotions are actually broken down into 3 different categories. We have 8 primary emotions and then secondary and tertiary emotions as well. Our primary emotions are a direct result of an experience, and they're powerful and overwhelming, but they often don't last very long. So here are the 8 primary emotions that you can experience. We have anger, fear, happiness, surprise, sadness, disgust, interest, and shame. So when we're able to name what it is that we're feeling, that is the first step to understanding ourselves more deeply. And I would definitely recommend, not only getting familiar with your 8 primary emotions, but also understanding the branches into secondary and tertiary emotions. And we're going to explain what those are a little bit more here as well. But when we truly understand what we're feeling, then we can go deeper into that. Like, why are we feeling this? What brought this feeling up? If we're holding on to this particular feeling, is it because maybe it's triggering a memory or an experience of our past that we haven't yet fully resolved? And so that takes us into step number 2, which is understanding the emotion. We can more deeply understand our emotions by understanding the secondary and the tertiary emotions. So secondary emotions are more subtle and complex than our primary emotions. Remember, our primary emotions come in very strong, but they don't last a very long time. And it's usually pretty obvious. Like, most people can identify if they're feeling angry or fearful or happy or surprised or sad or disgusted or interested or shameful, right? Those are the primary 8 emotions. And most people can identify within those 8 categories. Some might feel more familiar than others or feel more obvious than others. But how we can more deeply understand our emotion is by going into the secondary and tertiary emotions, which are more subtle, but also more complex. Secondary emotions are a blend of 2 or more primary emotions, and they branch off or become extensions from our primary emotions. Although they're not as strong, they do tend to last a lot longer than primary emotions do, and they do have a bigger impact on our overall well-being. So if you think about it like this, you're feeling angry, and that's happening as the primary result of an event. Now, anger doesn't last very long, but if you're holding on to anger and you're not moving through that emotion in a healthy way, then that emotion eventually kind of branches into or extends into a secondary or tertiary emotion. And that's what it looks like when we're starting to hold on to the emotion and not moving through the emotion in a healthy way. So a huge part in understanding your emotions is actually better understanding your secondary and tertiary emotions. Of course, the primary emotions might feel more familiar, but that's typically just in the present moment that you're going to be feeling those specific feelings. And then if we're holding on to an emotion for a longer period of time, that's when it starts to extend or branch into becoming a secondary or tertiary emotions. And there's many ways that secondary emotions can take form. For example, they might be a result of past events and you haven't really fully processed or dealt with them. Maybe they didn't seem super traumatic in that specific moment, but on a subconscious level, we haven't fully processed that event. And so now it might start to play out again in different scenarios or relationships in our life. So for example, there might be an event in your past that event triggered a primary emotion. And although that event that triggered the primary emotion is far behind you, the unresolved emotions create emotional memory. So when similar situations happen, this triggers similar emotional responses. So this is why certain patterns, especially patterns in relationships, might be playing out for you. If there's uncomfortable patterns that you keep, having manifested in your life or in your relationships, it's likely that there might be subtle trauma, right? Some subtle traumas could be an example of like growing up in a household with an alcoholic parent or a narcissistic parent or a verbally abusive parent. But that was just your normal upbringing. For you, that's all you knew. So that felt normal to you. But these little things can be very subtle traumas that are now manifesting themselves in our adult life in uncomfortable patterns. And so it's time for us to become more self-aware so that then we can move into self-emotional regulation and then start to manifest or attract more fulfilling and aligned situations and relationships into our life. Secondary emotions can also arise from anticipation of our future. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be past tense feelings, it can also be something that airs into that anticipation of the future. So things like resentment and fear are two secondary emotions that branch off of the primary emotion of anger. Resentment, being a secondary emotion, is essentially just being upset that you didn't get your way in the past and then holding on to that, probably towards another person. Where fear is a secondary emotion that airs into being afraid that you won't get what you want in the future. Of course, there's other ways that you can be afraid of things in life too, but we're just using that as an example here. Now, if we're basically looking at not getting our way, resentment, being upset that we didn't get our way in the past and then holding on to that feeling, or fear, the anticipation of being afraid that we won't get what we want in the future. If we look at the now moment, not getting our way right now, it's likely that we're going to be feeling anger, and that being that primary emotion. So when we break it down like this, you can see how one primary emotion, being in the present moment, and for this example, we used anger, can actually have very different feelings as a secondary emotion. Fear or resentment can all stem from the same feeling that we need to either be in control and always get our way. And so there's lots of complexities here, right? Which is why a lot of people are feeling disconnected from their emotions, because our emotions are constantly changing. And when we don't fully understand them, it's going to be harder for us to navigate through them. And so that's why taking a bigger look at not only the 8 primary emotions, but then understanding all of the rest of the secondary and tertiary emotions is really important when we want to really evoke deeper healing in our life and cultivate more aligned relationships and attract more aligned opportunities. So the way that we can start to step into that is describing and explaining how we are feeling, which is step number 3, describe and explain your emotions. So you first start with understanding the combinations and complexities of our secondary and tertiary emotions, which will allow you a deeper understanding on exactly what you are feeling and why it might be coming up for you. So you can ask yourself things like, what exactly am I feeling? And then go into trying to explain that as best as you possibly can. Articulating it wholly. What triggered it? What is coming up for you? What other feelings are associated with it? What other thoughts or beliefs or memories are associated with this feeling? And then ask yourself, what is the next course of action that I need to take in order to move through this emotion? And when we look at that and actually start taking action to move through the emotion, we'll start to realize that we need to honor our emotions. And you might not even know where to begin with honoring your emotions, which is why we fully need to understand, describe, and explain what we're feeling to start the process of moving through the emotion. So again, asking yourself things like, what exactly am I feeling? What specifically? What other feelings arise from this primary emotion? Can I name other secondary or tertiary emotions? What additional feelings come up? What thoughts or beliefs come up? And really going into explaining as best as you possibly can all the parts of what it is that you're feeling. Then asking yourself, what triggered it? Why is this coming up for me now? And then, what is the next course of action to best honor and move through this emotion? That might be the hardest part. Step number 4 is honoring your emotion. But check this out. There's some amazing modalities that I love teaching. One of them being emotional freedom tapping, or EFT tapping. It's known by several different names, but this is a pretty simple modality that will help you move through in honoring your emotions more effectively. So instead of suppressing your emotion, you are pinpointing exactly what it is that you're feeling, what you're thinking, and you're speaking it out loud. And at the same time, you're tapping different meridian points on your body while you're stating exactly what it is that you're thinking or feeling. Then after you move through these different tapping points, You're going to tap on loving and accepting yourself wholly and completely just as you are. And then you're going to go through tapping the same points again, reaffirming exactly what it is that you would like to feel. And we're using only positive statements here. So let's say that you are feeling angry that your partner isn't validating how you're feeling. You would tap on these different meridian points in your body and say, I'm angry that my partner isn't validating how I feel. And you're going to state that several times as you tap through these different meridian points. Then you're going to move through those same meridian points, tapping, although I am feeling upset or angry, I wholly and completely accept myself just as I am. And you're going to say that statement, tapping through these different meridian points. And then finally finish with a positive affirming statement, saying that I clearly express how I feel and I am patient with my partner. So instead of saying, what it is that you want or what it is that you don't want, you're saying the outcome that you wholly desire. So I am clear with my communication and expressing how I feel, and I am patient with my partner in their understanding. And that's going to start to shift the energy that you have around not only your emotion, but also the situation that is creating this negative or unwanted emotion in you. So this is just one of many modalities that can be very effective in helping you to not only honor your emotion, but transform how you feel through honoring that emotion. And then, moving through that, feeling more empowered, feeling more grounded, feeling more centered, and feeling more clear-minded. Because what happens when we're feeling negative? Typically, we're not thinking like our usual selves. Logic and reason goes out the window, and now we're acting in a fight or flight response pattern that we might later regret, which is one of the biggest reasons why it's so important for us to learn to understand, name, describe, and explain, and then honor our emotions. Other modalities that you want to look into as well is sitting with your emotion. Oftentimes we run to numb and distract ourselves away from what it is that we're truly feeling. Something that I deal with a lot, specifically with my high performance clients, people that are go-getters, people that are highly successful, people that, are high achievers, but can't seem to find relationships that match their true desires, that keep manifesting relationships that are just not quite fulfilling, or going through this pattern of dating people that are maybe emotionally unavailable. From my observation, I see these high performers having this very similar pattern because they're using their achievements as a coping mechanism. They haven't yet learned to sit with those not so good feeling emotions, to sit with those not so good feeling memories, and to learn to process them and sit with being uncomfortable. Instead, they're, out at the gym, killing it. They're working in their business and killing it. They're doing all these things and killing it, which is so awesome. But yet they're still left highly unfulfilled because they have these negative lingering emotions that they're not allowing themselves to simply sit with and process. So that's another great way for you to honor your emotions. Maybe you just need to take a break. If you're constantly doing, then when are you just sitting and being? So doing little things like taking a bath, taking a walk on the beach, or just sitting on the beach and watching the sunset, going for a hike, maybe get away for a weekend, and don't distract yourself with the actual getaway part. Go with the intention of just sitting with yourself. And it might be wild what you discover when you just take the time to intentionally be quiet, and when you learn to sit with yourself through those uncomfortable, awkward silences, right? Which is so crazy because who would think that you can have an awkward silence with yourself? But so many people do, because they're constantly doing instead of sitting and just being with themselves. Another way that can actually aid you in sitting and just being with yourself is understanding the chakra systems. And those are the 7 different energy meridian points that lie within the body and then can extend outside of the body into our aura and our auric energy. And this is actually going to help understand different maybe energy blocks that are happening within, and then how these different energy blocks are playing out and manifesting themselves in your relationships and everything else that you're attracting into your life. So different ways that you can honor your emotions are doing things like EFT, sitting with your emotion, journaling on a regular basis, meditating on a regular basis. I mean, of course, you can go to therapy and counseling, which I am a huge advocate of, but also understanding your energy systems, which includes your chakra systems, your aura, and understanding how to move through healing your chakras and your aura. And lastly, we move into step number 5, which is heal. When we want to honor our emotions, we must have the intention to connect in and heal our emotions. Now, I don't necessarily believe that we can heal wholly and completely. Why? Because we're always going to have these memories and this lingering energy within our subconscious aspect of who we are. So the memory of the pain is always going to be there. But how much are we allowing this pain to rule our life? When we sit with our emotions and when we sit with our pain, and when we ask ourselves deeper questions through these emotions and through this pain, and when we actually get to know our pain and our trauma, this creates a deeper connection with it. Instead of trying to shun it and run away from it, and it's constantly chasing us and influencing almost every aspect of our life, now when we learn to essentially befriend the things that have caused us our deepest rooted pain, and then move into a space of finding gratitude with the things that have caused us maybe torment, trauma, really negative patterns in our life, we can actually use all that has been maybe our biggest downfalls and shortcomings to enhance and uplift our life. But it all lies in the choice of intention, the choice of what are we going to do with this pain, the choice of being active and intentional within wanting to connect deeper with it and heal from our pain, but knowing that healing is going to be a lifelong journey. All healing really is becoming more familiar with what has traumatized you or tormented you or caused you hurt, pain, and shame. Becoming so familiar with it that now you can be grateful for what it has taught you, and learning all of the lessons that it has taught you to create a ripple effect of positive change in your life, which will permeate out from you to affect the lives of those around you. Becoming an emotional master is what this work is about. So now that you understand really more about the secondary and the tertiary emotions and how they arise, it might be a good time to perform a mental self-check-in today. So I encourage you to sit with yourself and try and focus on the emotions that you're feeling. Don't necessarily feed into a good emotion or feed into a bad emotion. Just be honest with yourself. Just sit there, no judgment, and just be. Focus on the emotions. Focus on your feelings. Focus on the feelings in your body. Do you feel tense? Do you feel tired? Do you feel sore? Do you feel anxious? Give what you're feeling a name and think of the reason why these feelings might be there. Are they there because of a specific event? Maybe someone said something to you and that irked you in a way and it created this feeling in your body. Maybe you're feeling triggered in some way. Maybe you're holding on to a thought, a worry, a fear of something out in the future. Or maybe this is just your emotional home. And it's so familiar to you that it's all you really know. Studies have shown that humans are almost always feeling at least one emotion, if not more, at any given time. Everything in your life is deeply emotional. even if you aren't aware of it. And this is why putting some time and effort into understanding your emotions can be a worthy investment. And it will pay off greatly for you in the long run. The more that you allow yourself the time, the intention, the patience, and the grace to grow within yourself, it can bring you closer to learning how to fill your life with positive emotions. And this is definitely a path worth pursuing. I know because I've done it for myself and I get to do it for so many people every single day. And it just blows my mind that, often I get asked how I got into this line of work, into being a coach. There's the obvious, like, oh, I was doing the personal training thing and I was noticing these different personality characteristics about my most successful clients and then the clients that weren't achieving their goals. And that got me really fascinated with psychology. And that's how I got into this work. And yes, that is a part of the story, but this is my life's work. Why? Because I have a deep attachment to it. I've had to personally go through all of these modalities myself and do all of this work myself because I have some very obvious traumas and triggers of my past, but then I have those more subtle ones. Being raised in a household where, what was normal for me is totally not normal for a lot of other people. And now as an adult looking back, I'm like, holy shit, I see how a lot of these, programming, this indoctrination that I had from being a child and being raised in a household like that, did traumatize me in a sense. It wasn't obviously traumatic, but it definitely changed the way that I see myself, how I see relationships, how I see the outside world, and how I manifested a lot of unwanted things into my life for a very long time. And so really how I got into this work was out of necessity. I was so tired of having these toxic relationship patterns, both with intimate relationships, romantic relationships, and with friendships, as well as business relationships. It seemed like everyone that came into my life polluted my life in some way, diminished my self-worth even more. And I was expressing this one day to a mentor, and my mentor pointed it out. Like, girl, I think you might be the problem. And of course, I didn't want to admit it. I wanted to feel like the victim. And that's what felt most familiar to me, was always being the victim. But as my mentor was breaking down the patterns of my life, it really got me to wake up and see that obviously there's something underlying here that's continuously manifesting these patterns into my life. And it's uncomfortable and I don't want to do this anymore. And I know what I desire, but I keep falling way short of actually getting those things. And so I set out on a journey of going back into therapy, working on myself, hiring a coach, meditating daily, doing a lot of the different modalities that we talked about in today's episode, learning to sit with myself, learning when I'm not okay, learning when I am numbing or running from the things that I should be sitting with, nourishing, addressing, and healing. There's so many different ways that we as human beings can feel, good and bad, and, indifferent, in between. And so it's my passion and part of my life's work to educate more people on how they can get more deeply connected within themselves, creating that deep self-awareness and deep emotional regulation. I actually wrote a complete certification all about emotional intelligence and teaching you emotional freedom tapping, which was that modality that we talked about in the step number 4, honor your emotions section of this episode. If this is something that you're interested in learning for yourself, or maybe you want to apply it to your coaching business and teach other people, I would be happy to have you as a student, whether it's under just these 2 modalities for emotional intelligence and emotional freedom tapping, or if you're looking to fully pursue your career as a coach and leader and get certified in 8 modalities, I would absolutely love to welcome you in as a student to the Collective Conscious Coaching Academy, where you can become a certified emotional intelligence and emotional freedom tapping practitioner. If this is something that you are interested in, simply go to kaelroberts.com/links LINKS, and you can find more details that are included inside of these different modalities and certifications. Of course, if you have any questions, I would happily hop on a free call with you, go over all of the details that are inside of these 2 different modalities, or all 8 if that's what you feel called to participate in, and hopefully welcome you in as a student. So again, all you got to do is go to my website, kaelroberts.com/links to look into all the details or schedule your free call with me. But as always, I am just so grateful for you being here with me in today's episode. And remember, there are some fire podcast guests coming on over the next few weeks, talking more in depth about love, relationships, and emotions. And I can't wait to see you there. Thank you for joining me in today's episode. I am so grateful you are here with us today. If you loved today's episode, take a screenshot, share it on social media, and tag me in it, because not only do I love to feel all the love, but I also love to hear your feedback. I love connecting with my audience, so let's get connected on social media. Find me, I am the Kael Collective on Instagram and kael.collective on TikTok. I love sharing value as much as I can, so I would love to get connected with you more further. Until next time, my love, rise up.